Yes, everybody, welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you are watching on our fast-growing YouTube channel, that is Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ here for yet another episode of our UNC Basketball Lookahead Series. Going to be focusing on Caleb Love in this edition. Just a quick recap for those who don't know. Throughout the week, Monday, we roll out AJ rolls out a look-ahead article on a specific player, if I can get that out, Caleb Love this week. On Wednesday, he rolls out an article on his 5 best games from last season. And then Friday, of course, you're watching this podcast, is when we drop the podcast on that individual player as well. If you want to see the other ones we've done, just go to our YouTube channel, hit the playlist tab, and you will find that under Look-Ahead Series. And remember, guys, before we dive into this one, you can be an insider at TarHeelIllustrated.com for just $8.33 a month. And if you're over there right now, you know the intel bombs AJ's been dropping on the ACC realignment. David's been all over the GG Jackson situation. That thread is still on fire, is what I like to call it. So, guys, if you want to have access to that, if you want to be a Carolina insider too, you got to sign up, and it's just $8.33 a month. Link to that and our website is in the description below. But AJ, Caleb Love, a guy that a fan favorite with Carolina fans right now. Absolutely love him after the big year he had last year for the Tar Heels and that shot against Duke, which I'm sure we'll talk about it here in some point. But diving into his stats, 34.2 minutes per game, 15.9 points, 3.4 rebounds, 3.6 assists, shot 37.1% from the floor and 36% from three last season. So AJ, before we look ahead, which is obviously the point of this podcast, what are your kind of thoughts and your analysis on the career that Caleb Love's had in Chapel Hill so far, and more specifically, the year that Caleb Love had last season for the Tar Heels?
He showed a lot of growth. He showed a lot of growth in a lot of areas. The thing that, and I talked to Hubert about this a couple times, talked to Caleb about it, especially once we got in-person stuff late in the year. I had a really nice conversation with him about it, or an exchange with him about it in New Orleans. But it came out, actually, I wrote about it in Philadelphia, and that's his personality on the court, his demonstrative way of getting in the heads of opponents, barking at opponents, the way that he would carry on after a big three, the way that he would say stuff to other guys. And on the road a couple of them, we talked about this a little bit in the pods that we did back during the run. But, and I think it really started February 1st when they went to Louisville. That's when I first saw him barking at fans. Of course, that was a very tumultuous atmosphere. I had a lot of people mouthing off that night. But Caleb wasn't mouthing off. He was barking. Mm-hmm. And there's a difference. Barking is part of his game. And it's okay if that's part of his game. But bark when it's justified to bark. And I think it took a while for that to really start coming out, because it took him a while to become more comfortable in what he was supposed to do there, to develop the kind of chemistry with RJ and some of the other guys that allowed his game to sort of grow and expand more. And what we saw as a result, there were some nights he was terrible shooting the ball, and he wasn't always really, really good. But his 3 highest scoring games of his career at Carolina all came during the NCAA tournament. Marquette when he had 23, UCLA 30, 28 against Duke, and he hit big shots. He had 22 in the second half against Duke. He had, 22 as well, I think, in the second half against UCLA or whatever the number was. So he became a crunch time player. The way he played late in Blacksburg, which was an enormous win for this team, several days after the home loss to Pitt, in which the whole world pronounced them dead. Everyone was shoveling dirt on the Tar Heels. Caleb said, give me the damn ball. I'm going to either score or I'm going to get to the free throw line and I'm going to hit free throws. So he was really becoming the next level guy that he developed into over the course of the season. And I think that Carolina fans can expect another type of jump this year. And the jump's going to have to maybe not be 40-point games. It's going to have to be more 28-point games, more consistency. The 3 for 18 stuff has to end. Instead of 3 for 18, he's 7 for 18. It's a different night. I know that's not a great shooting percentage, but if that's your bad end, then that's pretty good, because he's still going to be in the 16, 17, 18-point range. Hit enough big shots to stress opponents and to make defenses always honor and respect him. And that was my take about this last season. He grew up. And he grew into Caleb Love, the player. It's not just a more mature player who was really well connected with his teammates. There's this outward dog in him that was allowed to finally come out, but it only could come out if a lot of stuff was working right for him. So I think that that's a plus. That's his game. Hubert's comfortable with it, and certainly didn't tell him to hold back at all. Caleb's barking. That means good things are happening. And he barked a lot, especially the last 2 months of the season.
I think he plays better when he's barking too. I think it's just his.
Well, it's hand in hand. Jacob, it's hand in hand. Mm-hmm. And I asked him about that. And I asked RJ Davis about that in New Orleans. And RJ, when I was asking the question, you could see the smirk on his face. Like, he knew exactly where I was going. And in his mind, he's probably imagining all the stuff that they see, because he said he does it in practice. Like now he does it in May and June when they're playing pickup at the Dean Dome and all the pros are there. When Caleb is barking at a former Tar Heel who's a professional somewhere, that means Caleb's playing some hoops.
I'm telling you, man, that's just who he is. Just go watch his high school tape. If you don't, I think he's just always been like that. And I personally love watching guys like that. And I think that's why he's such a fan favorite with so many people, because of the way he plays. And AJ, we're going to continue to kind of look ahead at Caleb here in a second. Before we do that, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor on this podcast, myperfectfranchise.net. Now, guys, if you're looking to diversify, if you're looking to leave the corporate rat race to gain control of your income and schedule, what about having unlimited PTO, the ability to create income and wealth? Guys, look no further than myperfectfranchise.net. Andy Ludicky is the founder and owner over there. Will guide you through a comprehensive franchise evaluation to see if opening a franchise is right for you. He has a ton of franchise and business ownership experience to lean on. He's a guy that is an expert in what he does in this franchise field. So guys, if looking to diversify your portfolio a little bit, leave the corporate rat race, start a new adventure, and take control of your own professional life is something that sounds appealing to you, is something that you're thinking about doing or have been considering doing for years, I encourage you to take the jump now with myperfectfranchise.net and Andy Ludicky. We love him. He's a huge Mac Brown fan as well. So guys, if you do talk to him, if you do reach out, which I 100% recommend that you should, this is a great time to do so. Make sure you tell him that THI sent you over there. Can't say enough about myperfectfranchise.net. I know AJ and Andy have had a ton of communication on the back end over the past few months as well, really trying to figure out how we can continue to blast his website and the awesome things he's doing over there. So we're really excited to continue to partner with Andy over there at My Perfect Franchise. Link is in the description if you want to head over there. And like I said, if you do end up talking to Andy, which you should, make sure you tell him that TarHeelIllustrated.com sent you. Big shout out to My Perfect Franchise. Link is in the description below. Head on over there and start your new career path today. AJ, love that sponsor. And let's continue to talk about Caleb Love.
And he will talk about Mac Brown.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For a while.
He's a huge Mac Brown fan.
That's all a good thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So, AJ, we're going to continue to look ahead at Caleb right now and looking ahead to next season. You mentioned it a few minutes ago, and this is where I wanted to take the conversation. Consistency. I think that's the biggest thing that most Carolina fans, maybe criticize Caleb for, get a little frustrated with him at times, because a few kind of keywords or buzzwords that have been tossed out by members of, the national media, whatever, that don't cover Carolina as hard, but, cover them during the run and when they're making the run in the NCAA tournament last year. A lot of things that were tossed around was, I think, shooting Carolina out of games is something that a lot of people have said about Caleb Love, having some inconsistencies throwing the ball in the net. Because he's a guy that even when he's missing, he's going to continue to take shots. And he's had off nights where the ball has just not gone in the net and he's continued to attack. And sometimes it's paid off and won Carolina the game in the end. And sometimes it's backfired and in a lot of ways has hampered Carolina in their chances to win games. Consistency has been, I think, everybody's biggest concern and criticism with him. And I think it's a valid one too. I think it's something that he's going to continue to improve on. And like you said, if you can turn that 3 for 18 shooting night into a 7 or 8 for 18 shooting night, you're having a completely different conversation about the low end of Caleb Love compared to the high end. Because for me, when I look at Caleb, I think he's got it all. He's got attitude. He's got the ability to create his own shot. He's got the ability to take over games, not only take over games, but hit big shots in the biggest moments. Look no further than Carolina's win over Duke in the Final Four last year. Caleb Love has that ability. If he can be more consistent doing so, his draft stock's going to rise, his national stock's going to rise. And before you know it, he's going to be a first-team All-American. He's got that written all over him. But I think he's got to continue to improve that consistency thing. And I think that's the biggest thing. Not only the coaching staff is going to challenge him to do during his junior season, but he's going to challenge himself to do as he not only looks to have a big year for Carolina, but increase that draft stock and see what he can do at the next level.
Caleb's a guy that on the surface, you would say he takes a lot of bad shots. He could have gotten that shot later in that possession. A lot of those kind of shots, right? So maybe not necessarily bad shots, but shots that try to get something else that's out there. That 23-footer, that quick release 23-footer, one dribble 23-footer, it's going to be there. So maybe don't take it with 20 seconds left on the shot clock. You can get it with 8 seconds or 6 seconds left on the shot clock. So, but at the same time, if he hits a couple more of those, it changes everything. And so I think Hubert is okay with a lot of those shots because, again, it's part of his game. He's one of those players that you're going to have to take some of that stuff in order to get the rest of the stuff. And if you're going to get the 11 points out of the 13-0 run against Duke in the second half that he had in New Orleans, where he was breathtaking, you've got to maybe sometimes get the other stuff to get to that point, because usually those runs by him, those spurts are later in the game. It's after a couple, missed threes. It's after missed runners. It's after he drives in a lane, gets hammered, and hits the floor. Do you remember when Marquise Williams was quarterback at Carolina? Phenomenal player, one of the grittiest, toughest dudes I've ever covered in any sport at any level. And Marquise told us one time that, it took him a while sometimes in games to really get rolling. He said, I just need to be hit a couple of times. And I remember Jeff Schottmer joked one time after a game saying that, we should just pop him a couple of times in the locker room and he's good to go when the game starts. Yeah. I think Caleb sometimes needs to get out there and sweat, needs to get a feel for things, needs to get pushed around, needs to have to dig it and get that inner dog to come out a little bit more, and then everything starts to flow. So you have to sort of take some of that stuff to get all the other things, but he does need to minimize some of the lesser stuff, if you will, some of those 0 for 8 stretches, that kind of thing, which there have been in his game. If the 0 for 8 stretch is a 2 for 8, and the idea that spurt's coming, you can live with that because that's who he is. And I think that they have enough weaponry that they can compensate for 2 for 8 stretches, especially if it means he's going to explode later on. That's all part of consistency. Being a little bit better when you're bad, if you will, for lack of a better term, that's part of consistency, because the really good stuff's still going to be there. He's going to have the 30-point games this year. He's going to have some of those games where you're like, man, that's about as well as I've seen a Carolina guard play in years. Then he's going to have some games where you're like, man, how come he's like this 4 days after being like that? Mm-hmm. That's the stuff he needs to fix, and that's why he came back to school. Hubert has done an amazingly brilliant job of communicating to Caleb exactly what he must be in college in order to be ready to make it in the NBA and get that second contract, get that third contract. So some guys come to school, think they're going to get it right away. I'm one and done. But it doesn't work out that way. And some make the poor decision to still leave because they feel like they have to. It was the plan. They're going to stick to the plan. But some are smart enough to adjust when they get to school. And they're fortunate enough to have people like Hubert Davis in their lives that can communicate to them with absolute, speaking from personal firsthand experience, and absolute understanding of the process that, you know what, don't be in such a rush. Because if you're in such a rush, the league may be in a rush to get rid of you because the league doesn't care. But get there, be able to offer something, be more consistent, have a little bit more edge to your game, have a little bit more gravitas to your game, be able to, it might get you on a roster, that might keep you on a roster, that might get you 12 minutes a game as a rookie instead of a bunch of DNPs. That's how you get yourself to the second contract, which is when most guys are able to create generational wealth for themselves. And I think that that's been the message with Caleb. So you're going to see a guy who is working his rear end off right now on being more consistent. Going to be better at the good stuff too, but be a lot better at the not so good stuff. Make those stretches a lot more palatable for the team to absorb and for Hubert and for fans to watch. And if that occurs, you're talking, like you said, first team All-America type guy.
Agreed. He's got all the tools in his bag, for lack of a better word. And like I said, I think it just comes with the process where that we talk about becoming more mature, understanding the type of player that not only Hubert and the team needs him to be, but what he can do out on the court, and not trying to maybe do too much and make too many plays and go out of his way to be the hero at times, and just sticking to what he knows, being more consistent with what he's good at. And then there's no doubt about it, he's going to be, I think he already has kind of proven himself going into this year being one of the best guards in the country. But I think he has that ceiling of where he can be the best guard in the country. And I think that's the challenge for him this year. AJ, last thing I want to ask you real quickly.
Let me add one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Before you add that. And I just want to jump in here too, because I want to make sure I say this, because I know this for a fact as well. Caleb, winning became more and more important. It was always important to him. But there is something that's really neat about covering a program like North Carolina, when all guys come in, they want to win. But then suddenly when the winning becomes far more important, it's this right here. When they want to win for that, and they want to win for their guys, their brothers in the locker room, and they want to win for themselves. But when it gets to this level where it's driving them, like it is with Armando, I remember I had that one-on-one interview with Armando last February, and so much of it was about this. And that's when I realized, okay, there's a lot of things I realized about him at that point, and it was great to hear. This matters to Caleb, which is why coming back and improving and becoming an NBA guy, that's all part of the process. But another part of it is winning. And Hubert will tell you, you win and you play in those Final Four games and those Sweet 16 games where you show up and you're huge those nights, that's going to get you there as well. Caleb's much more highly thought of now because of what they did during that run. They don't make the run. He doesn't have the UCLA game. He doesn't have the shot of a Mark Williams. But this has become part of his DNA too. And I want to make sure I made that clear for people.
No, it's a great point to put up. Last thing real quick before we wrap this one up, AJ, 34.2 minutes per game last year. Such an integral part, a guy that just didn't come out a lot. What are you looking at the roster next season? Is he a 35-minute per game guy? And if he's not, is it a benefit to Carolina if he can play? Maybe you cut that down by 5 minutes. Maybe he's playing 30 minutes a game. Is that a bigger benefit to Carolina to get a fresher, more ready to go Caleb Love instead of a guy that's playing a majority of every single game throughout the ACC grind, especially?
Well, the 4 returning starters showed us that they can be those guys. However, Hubert acknowledged a couple of weeks ago when we talked to him in Chapel Hill that he thought that the team was tired in the second half against Kansas.
Agree. Yeah.
They came over during a timeout. He looked around and said, "My team's tired." And I was courtside. I was right behind Nance and those guys, and I could see it as well. And it looked tired. I was talking to a couple of guys sitting next to me on press row. It's like, yeah, they look tired. The legs look a little heavy now. And that was one of the reasons Kansas was able to make the run. So, yeah, Caleb can be that guy. I don't think those guys have to play as much for Carolina to be a national championship team, because I do think the depth, the bench can give them more. But Hubert, he'll play the depth. We've talked about this before. He lost 2 of his rotation guys during the season, and Puff became one. So if the other 2 don't leave and Puff's still there, it's an 8-man rotation in March, and that's what coaches strive for. So no one would be saying anything about that. The minutes wouldn't be as high. Yes, he can be a 35-minute-a-game guy. No, I don't think he will be a 35-minute-a-game guy this year, because they're not going to have to play him that much. They're going to blow out the non-conference teams, the Patsies, more than they did a year ago. Last year, they win by 18 or 20, and he doesn't pull the starters until a minute and a half are left. Yeah. Now, if you're up by 35, you can pull the starters with 5 minutes left, and it's less wear and tear, less accumulation over time. So I don't think he'll play as much, but I think he could be as or more productive playing fewer minutes.
Agreed. And I think, a fresher, healthier iron 5, or I guess you iron 4 now with Nance coming in for Manic. We'll see how that works out. A fresher, a more ready to go, a one that's not as tired in every game because of how much they're playing is a benefit for everybody. If you can have guys coming off the bench, they can come in and give you some valuable minutes. That's just so great for the team, and especially when you're trying to make a late run in March. So it's supposed to be a big year for Carolina basketball. A lot of expectations going into them. Caleb Love going to be a guy that's expected to lead this team and get this team to where a lot of people expect them to go, where they think they can go. And I think all of us are expecting another big year out of the junior guard next season. Good place to wrap this one up, though, AJ. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. We appreciate you watching yet another episode of our UNC Basketball Lookahead Series. Again, quick shout out to myperfectfranchise.net and Andy Ludicky. Check them out. Link is in the description below. myperfectfranchise.net. Make sure you tell them THI sent you. And real quickly, guys, head on over to TarHillIllustrated.com. Sign up for just $8.33 a month, where you can be a Carolina insider too. Link to our website is in the description. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell as well. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.
Thanks.